Thanks for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Melissa. I am the Director of Client Engagement here at Infused Innovations. Today we have Matt Soseman with us. Not only is Matt a Microsoft security architect, but he also creates a lot of really awesome and valuable security content for Microsoft on his YouTube channel, which you can find under his full name, Matt Soseman. All of us here at Infused Innovations are so humbled and so happy to have you here chatting with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Today, we wanted to dive deep and discuss Microsoft security with you, specifically Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, threat and vulnerability management. Just when we thought we knew our Microsoft products, along comes another name change.
Yeah, there's a rebranding exercise that happened last week at Ignite, and so Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is now Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection is now Microsoft Defender for Office 365, and then Azure Advanced Threat Protection is now Microsoft Defender for Identity. So there's been some changes around, and not only in the Microsoft 365 products, but also in Azure. So.
Yeah, I mean, it can get confusing with the products constantly changing, so we appreciate that. We know that security is more important than ever before, and as companies are transitioning to remote work, which a lot are right now, many organizations tend to feel lost as to how to go about implementing security in their organization and what the real benefits are for them. We at Infuse get a lot of questions about how the technology works, what to expect when investing in security software, such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So, Matt, could you tell us a little bit about what Microsoft Defender for Endpoint even is and why a business should look into investing in this security platform in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is a endpoint protection platform, and it allows us to protect essentially desktops, laptops, servers, and even mobile devices. And so not only do things like antivirus, but also have capabilities like endpoint detection response. So we can look for strange behavior happening on those devices and be able to mitigate it. And then help you keep track of vulnerability management and help you make sure that those devices are properly configured, properly secured, and kept up to date.
And we do get a lot of questions from our clients about the user experience. So for example, is it easy to understand what's going on in our environment? Can you tell us more about how the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint software works in terms of the end user interface? So another question is, how would organizations be notified of alerts? How should an organization manage those threats when they pop up? So talk to us maybe about the usability of the tool and the best practices around it.
Yeah, sure. So it's a cloud-based tool. There's no on-premises infrastructure, no servers you have to deploy or anything like that. It's 100% cloud-based, and it's actually there's no agent to deploy either. It's actually built into Windows 10. You just have the license to turn it on. Now it does support Mac OS. It supports iOS, Android, and even Linux, and obviously those will require agents. But when you log into the admin portal, it's a web-based portal. And you have, right off the bat, your ability to see basically all of the what we call incidents happening in the environment and all the different alerts and all the different activities that are happening. And it's simply just kind of point and click. And the portal is very easy to navigate. It's very easy to use. There can be some items in here that might be a little intimidating because they can be technically complex in nature, and I think that's where Infused Innovations can help you with that. But for the most part, it's very easy to navigate, and because it is web-based, you can access it on virtually any device. So one of my favorite things about it is not only because it's accessible on any device, but I can also automate a lot of my tasks as well. So I may not have to come in here as much as I think I might have to. So lots of different advantages to this product.
That's great to hear. I mean, if a security platform is difficult and confusing to navigate, there might naturally be unresolved threats or breaches, as clients would have a hard time figuring out how to resolve them. So let me ask you, one of the benefits that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Threat and Vulnerability Management offers is continuous scanning from multiple sources. Can you tell us why this is important, and do other solutions on the market offer this?
Yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned before, it's built into Windows 10, and then for the other third-party platforms like Mac OS, there's an agent. But let's talk about Windows 10 for a moment. So it's doing more than just antivirus scanning. It's looking for behavior on that device. And so, let's say I get a phishing email and I click on the link because everybody clicks, and
Yeah.
it compromises my machine, and that bad guy is now on my machine, maybe trying to impersonate me and try to run other applications and do nefarious things. The behavioral analytics portion of this will see that strange behavior and say, well, that's not normal for Matt. And that's going to trigger an alarm and even an automated response in some cases where the system will try to automatically respond to it and mitigate that threat. And so that's continuously happening in the background. And in addition to that, it's looking at all this other telemetry coming out of that device, like event logs and network traffic, and it's able to do other things. So, for example, I talked about clicking on that link in that phishing email. I can even add what we call an indicator of compromise that says if you try to click on that link, let's actually block that link at that OS level. So when I click on that link, I can get a big red splash page that says, this site has been blocked. And so there's lots of things that happen in the background. And for the most part, the system is intelligent enough and automated enough that it's very low intervention from you as the admin, and then your end user, they never even know what's happening.
Right.
Because it's agentless, it's built in, so it's very transparent.
Oh, that's awesome and really accessible to people who might not be familiar with tech. If Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Threat and Vulnerability Management detects a high-risk machine, can it block access to Microsoft 365?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you consider a high risk machine and what that means, and let me just find a visual here to look at for a moment. That high risk machine can be compromised by malware. It could be compromised by maybe a bad guy that's in the machine. And so we have what's called conditional access that can kick in at the device level. And so a really good example of this is, let's say my machine gets ransomware on it. When I try to access my email or some kind of a line of business application, when I try to sign into it, it will do a quick scan on that machine to see if there's any known threats. And because it finds that ransomware, it will actually deny my ability to log into that app. And that's kind of a big deal, because if you think about like OneDrive or Dropbox or those cloud storage apps that have that local agent on your machine, that would actually prevent it from signing in. So even though my computer is compromised by ransomware, my data that's in the cloud will still be protected. So some really interesting capability there around conditional access.
Right. Very cool. And we often see attack surface reduction alerts and tenants that aren't using Intune and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Threat and Vulnerability Management. Is there an easy way to address these?
Yeah, so one of the core features of Defender for Endpoint is threat and vulnerability management, and there's a dashboard here that you can leverage that helps you understand, what are those high risk machines, but also what software is installed on those machines, and do those apps have vulnerabilities associated with them. And then from there you can see, well, what version of the app is installed, and then figure out, well, what machines have that version of app installed, and then you could kind of trace those breadcrumbs to then figure out, well, now I need to go and patch those and take care of those. But then I also have a list of security recommendations from Microsoft that comes back, and it's tailored to my environment. And so it's looking at those machines and saying, well, Matt, you need to not only update those apps and get them on the latest version to fix those vulnerabilities, but you also need to enable some of the security features that, well, they're frankly built into the OS that they are just not enabled. So things like attack surface reduction rules and BitLocker and all those different types of actions can really help you to improve that posture. So when you come back to looking at your overall vulnerability management, it's not just vulnerable apps, it's also making sure your devices are properly configured.
Right. Wow. Okay. It seems like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint really sort of touches every base and makes sure that there are no vulnerabilities for intrusion. This has all been really great information, Matt. Thank you so much. So let's say that I'm sold on Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Threat and Vulnerability Management. How could I sell this to my boss?
Yeah. So I think there's many different ways to answer that question, but calling upon my experience, and way back in the day when I first started my career, I was an IT person for a small organization, and I had to do a lot of selling to my boss for different products and things. And so something that I always found to be valuable was, because I was a one-man shop, I had a day job where I had to do other things and not just, one thing. So the more automation, the more I could have automation apply to my environment, the better. And that's where this kicks in. If you deploy this to those endpoints, it does provide a level of automation so that if there are malware or ransomware or just risky events happening, the system will attempt to automatically respond. And so that's one selling point to my boss, to say, look, that frees up my time so I can go out and focus on what matters. And then second thing is being able to leverage this for maybe additional solutions. So for example, there's a content filtering capability where, especially with people right now working remotely, if I want to make sure that those employees are not able to browse to inappropriate websites or, watch streaming videos during the workday, I can actually, using this product, block their web browsers from going to different websites. And so that's built in. And so that could be an additional capability. And then there's other capabilities as well, again, applying that automation and just making sure that the environment's secure. When we talked about threat and vulnerability management, helping my boss understand that, hey, we are insecure here, and if we leverage this product, it can help us get more visibility. So I think there's lots of different ways to have that conversation. The last thing I'll mention, though, is around ROI, return on investment. Especially if I'm using many other security products out there in the market, there might be an opportunity here to consolidate and actually save some money. And that could certainly be a selling point back to my boss.
Great. Thank you again, Matt, for sharing your valuable knowledge on Microsoft security, specifically Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Microsoft Defender Threat and Vulnerability Management. It was so great to have you on here with us at Infused Innovations. We really appreciate you taking out the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If you would like to learn more about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or contact us for a quote, you can head over to our website at infusedinnovations.com or shoot us an email at info@infusedinnovations.com. Thanks for listening.